This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Hey, this is Brian Peña. I always join the Vito podcast, the best podcast in the United States.
And Doc, as you know, one of our fine partners at the Detroit Sports Podcast Network is The Athletic, which is premium coverage for passionate Detroit sports fans. And listeners of this very edition of Tiger Stock of Chirco and Company can get a subscription, 20% off, too, of their first year of an annual subscription to The Athletic by visiting theathletic.com/DSP. And welcome to the latest, the freshest edition of Tiger Stock with Chirco and Company. I am your host, Vito Geronimo Chirco, alongside my usual sidekick and broadcast partner in fun. That is the Doc from Doc and Jack, John Charles Macaroon. John, how are you doing?
Vito, I'm glad you're not behaving like Jose Iglesias has been. You are following all the objectives. You're listening to the Doc.
Oh,
you
yeah.
are in line.
I have to. But...
Yes, thank goodness you are, because I don't know how I would have to address you if you were being a malcontent or defiant like Jose Iglesias. I want to start there because I think this is the first test for Ron Gardenhire in terms of how he's handling things, and I like it. I feel like Ron Gardenhire is the manager. He's the guy in charge, and he's come out and said, look, Jose Iglesias has got to kind of try a little bit harder. He has to produce a little bit more. And when you look at the week that Jose Iglesias had, it's been a little bit challenging, Vito, and let me set the table for you. In the last week or so, it just seems like his antics have kind of shown through. Maybe either he's not 100% committed, either he's not 100% focused on the game, or something's going on. Either he fell asleep at the wheel, is not 100% into it. When you have a situation like on Sunday where you have the shift on and your job is to cover a base and you don't, there's something wrong. And then you go out and you know you're going to be asked by the media what happened, and you go out and you don't put it on yourself. You say, hey, I can't do both jobs, and you basically throw your manager under the bus. He basically, in his response to that, because people asked him, like, hey, what happened? It looked like a real crap show on the bases on Sunday, and it led to some runs. And people were concerned, and they asked Jose Iglesias what was going on. And he said, look, I can't cover everything. I can't be at two places at once. And Ron Gardenhire said, look, this is a baseball play. You got to try a little bit harder. And why this is important, Vito, is there's probably a reason why Jose Iglesias is still on this team when everybody knows he's, the organization wants to trade him. And that's a big concern, because if you got a guy who's a behavioral problem and he's going to be continuing to act this way, if you don't nip it in the bud, and Gardenhire said he's going to have to talk to Jose Iglesias, but it's concerning to me right now, a player of that caliber who's really solid defensively, maybe the losing, maybe the fact that he knows his days in Detroit are numbered, that the organization wants to trade him. It can be hard, because imagine if you came in here and you knew that basically I wanted Blair, but you're here just because, and I'm trying to get her here, and you're just doing podcasts knowing you're playing out the string, maybe your last 10, 15 shows, and you know somebody bigger, better is coming in, and I'm going to ship you out to somewhere else or just let you go. You would come in here and be like, well, I really didn't read that article. I just, you might not prepare the guest, or you might be like, well, we got this guest booked. I'm not going to even show up or be late. And it might cause problems. So I can see the human side of it, but Tigers got to get it fixed right away. Jose Iglesias got to step his game up, because it's costing the Tigers right now. It's embarrassing.
Well, it sounds like I do all that anyways. What you just said that I would do if I was mailing it in.
Oh,
and
yeah?
I'm not, so hey, I do it anyways. Okay, all joking aside, and it's funny that you said he might have fallen asleep at the wheel too. Come on, man, insensitive about Iglesias. But I think also the thing with him and why he's like giving up or not showing the effort, he's been a malcontent in the locker room of late at least, is that he's becoming frustrated more and more at the plate too. He's
Why?
on pace for his lowest batting average, on base percentage, slugging percentage, on base plus slugging. Do you want me to give you more offensive numbers? I mean, seriously, all across the board, they're bad. They are the lowest marks of his career since he started playing in 100-plus games a year. which was in 2013 when the Tigers acquired him from the Bo Sox. Do you remember that, Doc? That trade at the deadline, they got him 2013. They made the ALCS, lost to the Red Sox in the ALCS. Should have made the World Series. I still say it to this day. And Jim Leland, who managed that club, will be a guest. How about that? A little plug for him. He'll be a guest, the biggest guest we've had so far, maybe on this podcast, and he'll be on this week's episode of Tigers Talk. We won't get into that, but we have a lot of topics to discuss with them. And Iglesias, I don't even know what his trade value back to him. I don't even know what his trade value is right now, Doc. I don't think it's that high because he can't hit. When you can't hit, and it seems like he's getting out. He's swinging, and he's making contact. He makes contact, but he's swinging and making contact and popping balls out. On the infield, or lazy fly balls. Nothing hard hit. I haven't seen one hard hit out of him this season, it seems like, out of Iglesias. And he doesn't K, but he's still swinging at a ton. He just makes contact on everything, but he's not putting it in play. So he's not hitting for average, not getting on base. He's really, in my opinion, irrelevant is what he's become, and his trade value is extremely low right now, too.
Disappointing, huh? But do you feel like Ron Gardenhire is handling it appropriately, feeling like, you know what, he has to go out there in front of the media and lay down the ground rules that, hey, I'm in charge, I'm the man, I'm the go-to, and that I do agree that, you know what, sometimes he has come out and said, look, you know what, the base running errors can't happen, it's a mistake, I got to get it corrected, and you hope, though, it has been a little bit concerning regarding the play. Yeah, the losses are piling up, yeah, now they're getting, there's several games under 500, but what's concerning is the fundamental part of the game is messed up. I mean, you even lost your cool. You had said, I can't believe what JaCoby Jones is doing. I mean, you're a guy, you're not even that negative, and you came out and said what JaCoby Jones did in terms of trying to tag to second, you're not used to seeing that.
No.
And you wouldn't expect that from a Ron Gardenhire coach team, is that a guy trying to tag to second base, right? You would expect that the team would be a little bit, maybe 10% fundamentally better.
Well, the thing is, it's good to be aggressive, but from first to second, you're tagging up. I don't get it.
I haven't seen that too often, right?
And Ron Gardenhire, that's not on him, by the way, because I know you said Gardenhire coach team, that wouldn't happen. Well, it's on the player. The player made the decision to tag up to second erroneously, and it cost him. He got out, and guess what happened the next at-bat? James McCann came up, and what did he do? Hit a home run. Solo shot. Would have been a 2-run home run to take the lead, I believe, at that point in that ball game. So a big-time mistake out of JaCoby Jones, and he better get his act together, hitting the baseball, being more smart on the base paths. And because he's declined, his production has declined. He had that great stretch, and I was still a pessimist, remember? When he was lighting it up, lighting the world on fire, but since then, since that early period, he hasn't showcased much at the plate. And I think this is really what JaCoby Jones is. What we've seen of late is really what JaCoby Jones is as a major league hitter.
Okay, now we got to talk about it, Vito. The world is abuzz. This is probably the second biggest topic that people are messaging us on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, and I'm curious to get your sense of it. Christin Stewart in the minors is tearing the cover off the baseball. That's all everyone's talking about is, look, this cat is doing the thing that we would want him to do in the minors, hit, be productive. And you look at it and you say, well, this is a rebuild for the Tigers. Why not just get him up here? But I think the report that I read was if they were to bring him up in terms of his role, the reason why he's not up yet is they don't want him to be basically like a DH and play once every 3 or 4 days or not be a regular guy in the rotation. A guy like that, you can let him play every single day, be involved in several scenarios, let him develop some confidence. And so I want to get your sense because I'm in agreement. Look, the Tigers with this roster is probably going to lose. You want to see him compete. It's no big deal that he's not up. But in terms of entertainment value, a guy that could be productive, you could say, hey, if you're going to lose, why not lose with a bunch of young cats? But there's also that fine balance of not letting someone come up and lose confidence if they strike out a lot, if they're not ready for it. But Stewart has been amazing, lighting it up in the minors. Do you think he maybe deserves a call-up to the big club? Should he be playing right now every single day for the Detroit Tigers at the Major League roster level?
Well, I would say when you're getting shut out like they have, scoring 0 runs, 1 or 2 runs, it brings, I think, validity to your point even more, Doc, and you're glowing right now because you know that I'm accrediting, your stance here on Christin Stewart. And I think, honestly, I don't want to rush anybody. Like you said, you don't want to rush anybody when they're not good. They're not going to win. And you don't want to rush anybody regardless of the situation. But I would say, you still have a mixture of veterans, some guys sprinkled in that have been veterans that can hit a little bit, but they're not hitting as a whole entire ball club. And when that's the case, as much as they've struggled of late hitting the baseball, well, I would say a guy like Christin Stewart who's mashing completely, well, you consider, bringing him up, but you might want to wait a little bit longer, prolong his stay in the minors a little bit longer. But soon enough, if he keeps hitting it, you know what? You got to call him up. Don't you think so, Doc?
Yeah, 29 games, 105 at-bats, scored 17 runs, 32 hits. He has a .305 batting average, on-base percentage of .380, slugging percentage of .590, and is doing some things.
Yeah, so his OPS is, off the charts if he were to do that with the Tigers.
OPS, .971.
So, I mean, that's more than good enough. But once again, who is he hitting against? When you're a minor leaguer, you have to take that into account. And obviously, once you get to the major league level, typically you tail off. You don't keep it up at astronomical levels such as Mike Trout. You're not going to hit at Mike Trout, levels. You're not going to produce at Mike Trout levels right away, typically at least. So, let's, get your, foot off the gas pedal a little bit and, let's lessen our expectations. When Christin Stewart gets called up for the first time, you got to remember that this guy, well, he's been facing lesser competition. So the competition at the major league level always is better. Remember that is stiffer. So don't expect him to hit for an OPS of above 900 right away when he gets to the majors.
All right, let's give the facts regarding Christin Stewart. He is 24 years old, born in 1983 from Atlanta, Georgia, 6 foot, 205. He bats left-handed, throws right-handed. He was a first-round draft pick, round 1, 2015, of the Detroit Tigers out of Tennessee. And so people are kind of fast-tracking this guy. They want to see him, but I can respect your patience, and I do agree with you, and I'm glad that you're showing a little bit of reserve and not just wanting to throw up young cats, because there is a risk that maybe he's not ready, you lose confidence, and at the major league level, though, at 24 years old, you would think, okay, you know what? There is a chance that maybe not in May, but there's a chance probably in September when there's the expanded rosters and the call-up that there's a chance we're probably going to see Christin Stewart, because by then most expect the Tigers to be mathematically eliminated.
Well, aren't they really right now mathematically eliminated without being mathematically eliminated? So in so many words, they're not going to win the division. I mean, they're in third place, by the way, now. So they're no longer this great second-place team. We were loving it. There was so much luster with the Tigers in second place. 14-20 now in third place in the American League Central Division.
How would you summarize the last 7 days for the Tigers?
Well, you know what? You've seen a little bit of, some good, some bad, but a lot more bad, because you know what? This is what the Tigers are made of. They're not going to be a steady Freddy, a team that consistently goes out there and wins you ball games. You're going to have those mental lapses out of JaCoby Jones on the base paths, out of Jose Iglesias defensively. You're going to see that out of these guys. But it's sad. It's even more erroneous and more glaring when it's a veteran that's having these mental lapses, isn't it?
But Vito, let me challenge you with this. They played the Royals, and they lost a series to a team that had
3 out
won.
of 4, that's bad.
That's not good.
That's bad
to
against
a
the Royals.
team.
Even on the road, it's bad.
Exactly. And so that's where it's concerning, is that, yeah, exactly. Sometimes it's not who you're playing, but when. And so the Royals caught the Tigers at a bad time where they weren't playing their absolute best. There are some concerns regarding the starters, some up and down play and things like that. But I think one of the big concerns that we keep noticing is the inability to get guys in from third base, the inconsistent offense, and probably what I noticed is the injuries are piling up, which is a little bit concerning.
Yeah.
Zimmerman,
on the 10-day DL, Norris out for the season. Miguel on the 10-day DL. Yeah.
Norris is out for the season?
Well, likely. You know what? I'm jumping to conclusions. 8 to 12 weeks he's going to be sidelined for.
Yeah.
But that's a long part of the season. They might just decide to sit him down the rest of the way this season because they're going to be out of the race. Once again, with these minor leaguers, these up-and-comers, you don't want to rush them because you're going to be out of the race. You are kind of out of the race already in third place, once again, 14-20. And with Daniel Norris, he's a youngster himself still. He's like 24, 25. I think 24 right now, like me. I'm 24, by the way. You don't want to rush a guy like me, Doc, like you've been trying to do, rushing me. Come on. You got to give us time, allow us to learn on the job a little bit, and get bigger and better by the day. And Daniel Norris, hopefully when he comes back, is fully healthy. He needs to get fully healthy. That's been my concern for a long time with him. Has he been pitching healthy, not fully healthy, and now we got to get him back to that mark where he is, and where he's pitching more like a guy that can go every 50 in the starting rotation of the Tigers, not as a lefty specialist out of the pen, when he's this youthful dude still. He should not be a bullpen arm right now, which he was. He started 2 games, but got rocked in those 2 games, and now he's had this horrible ERA since like all these starts and bullpen appearances he's made since April 20th. In an article that I wrote for the Free Press, by the way, this is included in there, the specific numbers and ERA numbers. And his ERA since like April 20th, Doc, of last year is above 5. It's like 5.79 for Daniel Norris, including his starts and bullpen appearances this season. That's how bad, how ineffective Daniel Norris has been now on the shelf. And just hopefully he gets that left groin strain. Hopefully he gets that figured out. And then you have Cabrera having this right hamstring stiffness. He's got to get figured out. And I guess it was controversial to him. And that's probably because he's a veteran. And he feels like, well, I've played through nagging injuries in the past and I've been all right. And he's hit the heck out of the ball this season. Unlike last year. More like 2 years ago. So he was thinking, I can play with this hamstring issue. Play throughout it and be all right. But instead the Tigers decided to put him on the 10-day disabled list and he wasn't happy.
At the time of this recording, the last 5 games, the Tigers are 1-4, and they lost the series to the Royals. The game on Monday versus Texas was really wild. They had a lead. They had an
They should have
opportunity.
won. Fulmer was dealing at first, right?
Fulmer was dealing, and then he had the rough inning. I think it was the 6th inning, and things fell apart. They scored some runs, and a lot of people were a little bit concerned specifically with that game. And we'll talk about that a little bit after the interview with Jim Leyland. But I think part of the reason why they were concerned is like the Tigers basically gave that one away.
They did.
With errors, mistakes, missed
And
opportunities.
that's a bad team you're playing. I know once again it's on the road, but Texas is not a good ball club itself right now.
Exactly. And so we'll talk about that going forward in terms of where the Tigers are at and what they're going to do in the coming weeks. So, Vito, I'm curious, when I told you, hey, we were talking about guest ideas and things like that, and you had somebody else in mind, I said, well, you know what? You've been sitting on Jim Leyland's phone number that I gave you.
I thought you forgot about it.
The
Now, I wasn't
producer-
trying to make you forget.
Of course
But
not.
I thought you actually did.
No,
But then you
no.
surprised me the other day and you brought up his name again. And obviously, am I going to say no to that? How bad would I look? Erroneous would I look? How can I say
Exactly.
no to Jim Leland?
So
right?
I know this is somebody you've wanted to interview. I know you had that glimmer in your eye when Adam and I had a chance to talk to him.
I
when
did.
I had a chance to interview him
Oh,
personally
you did.
and
There
asked
you
an
go. And you did.
amazing question
Yes.
that got a lot of hits.
Oh, amazing.
About Justin Verlander back when he was inducted into the Hall of Fame. What was your reaction and how are you feeling now? Because we're going to dial him up in about 120 seconds. We're going to dial him up. How are you feeling?
I'm all right.
You're
I'm
all
not
right?
too nervous. Hey, I'm bound to be a little bit nervous because I looked up to the guy, and I'm probably going to tell him. So you hear it during the interview. I'm going to tell him that I looked up to him in so many words. You will hear that
I had
during
a
the
feeling.
interview.
I had a
I got to
feeling.
tell him. Admit it.
So it will be a great interview. I'm thankful that we've had this opportunity at the podcast network to reach out to guests too. And I was being serious, sort of. I said, look, you call him whenever you want. I gave him your number.
And I called him. I did call him right away. You gave me the number that same day I called him up. It's just we've waited to have him on for like a month. But we allowed the season to marinate
out,
a little
yes.
bit, play out, and now we'll have him on to discuss a little bit about the Tigers. I mean, I'm not... Honestly, I know, this is about the Tigers right now. But I'm more interested about some stuff that he's done in the past.
Okay.
So it'll be a lot more about that, a little bit mixed in about the Tigers this season, too.
Exactly. And I know you're excited, and we'll dial him up. And listen, you can take the lead. I might chime in, but this is your thing. This is Tigers Talk with Chirco.
And company.
I guess maybe I might ask to change the title with Chirco and Doc. All right,
You would do that, huh?
Let's get Jim Leyland on the Detroit Sports Podcast. This edition of Tigers Talk is about to jump off. Let's get him on the phone.
And now joining us on this week's episode of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company via Vito's VIP line is a true VIP and a World Series winning manager and former Tiger skipper, Jim Leyland. Jim, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. How about you?
Very good. Great to have you on. And I got to start off by saying this. My first real joy as a Tigers fan growing up was in 2006 when you led the Tigers to the World Series. So I got to kind of thank you for that to start off, too. It's a great memory for me.
Well, I appreciate that. I think that was probably a good memory for a lot of people, including me. I think we surprised a lot of people that year, and it turned out to be really kind of a wonderful, wonderful year. It's just a shame we just didn't close it out all the way, but very exciting year, and I think probably the year that turned things around in Tiger baseball.
So, I mean, to kind of elaborate upon what you already said, how special was that 2006 team?
Well, it was really a special team, but I knew when I took the job that I knew that was a very, very talented group of players. I also knew they weren't a very good team at the time. They just, for whatever reason, they didn't mesh the way they were supposed to mesh. And so we went into spring training. I wrote a letter before I went to spring training to all the players. And we went into spring training. We tried to set the tone that, I wanted this team to take the field with an air about them, with a confidence about them, a certain swagger. Not cocky or anything, but, I wanted them to know that they were good, and I wanted them to know that the other teams thought we were good, so that was real important for me.
So what did managing in Detroit mean to you from 2006 until 2013?
I signed with the Detroit Tigers in 1963, and I was in the minor leagues 18 straight years with the Detroit Tigers, so it was like, coming home for me. I never thought, obviously, after the great Sparky run, I never thought I was off managing somewhere else. I never thought I'd get that opportunity. To manage the team that I signed with. I managed in the minor leagues for him 11 years, but to get that opportunity and that phone call from Dave and come up and interviewed and went through the process, and it was obviously a very special moment for me because it was like old home week going back to the Tigers. Like I said, I'd been there since 1963 to 1981, so I knew a lot of people there, and even though it was a new regime, new ownership, and everything, I still knew a lot of people, and it was a great time, wonderful experience.
What are your thoughts on this current rendition of the Tigers, sitting at 14-20 and in third place in the AL Central, going into Tuesday night's game with the Texas Rangers?
The Central's not really playing good right now. I think that the Cleveland Indians are still obviously the team to beat. They have an excellent ball club. I don't think they're quite as good as they were last year. I think that's kind of shown up a little bit. I think they missed Santana. They missed Bruce, Jay Bruce, who they picked up last season. But they're still probably the cream of the crop in the division. But nobody in the division is playing very well. So Cleveland's really not pulling away from anybody. And Minnesota's been up and down up to this point. The Tigers are holding their own. They let a couple games get away, which happens. It happens even when you're good, let alone when you're rebuilding. And I don't mean that they're not good, but they're rebuilding mode. It happens, but it happens even when you have an excellent team. So, they're holding their own. They seem to be in good spirits. They seem to love playing for Ron Gardenhire. And hopefully, we can take care of some of our ailments.
Now, Jim, I'm curious from a manager standpoint. You now kind of see a situation where Jose Iglesias kind of talked in the media regarding a play that wasn't made when a shift happened. He kind of spoke on his thoughts, and then you had manager Ron Gardenhire come out and say, look, we do expect a little bit more hustle from a player. So I'm just curious from a manager's perspective, what's the delicate balance you have in terms of being a guy that the players can relate to, but also being the head guy in charge, being a guy that the players respect? It must be a delicate balance, one that you got to constantly pay attention to.
Well, I think I never tried to tell my players not to say what they felt in the media. I don't really think there's anything wrong with that, and I don't think there's anything wrong with Gardy responding to it. I think this is a big boys game, and hey, that's just the way it is. Gardy said last night we had a 5-1 lead, and Fulmer let it get away. There's nothing wrong with that. That was fact. Doesn't mean you're mad at anybody. You're not criticizing anybody. You're not ripping anybody in the press. So I don't think Iglesias did any harm by what he said. There was some confusion, obviously, on the play, on the shift thing, which I think Gardy readily admitted. And Gardy responded because he felt like at least he could have made a little better effort, to try to compensate for the shift. And, this is a big boys game. I don't see anything wrong with that at all. I think, the only problem with that kind of stuff is it's music to the media's ear because they like to prey on it then, and they like to talk about it. But I don't think it's a big deal with Ron Gardenhire or Jose Iglesias.
So, Jim, you've got a lot of current and former big league skippers that are jealous of you because of the fact that you got to manage Barry Bonds in his prime in Pittsburgh and then Miguel Cabrera in his prime in Detroit. So I've wanted to ask you for a while now, how would you compare and contrast the type of hitters that those guys were? Specifically Bonds in Pittsburgh and then Miguel in Detroit.
Well, Bonds, nobody's ever going to admit this, but Bonds may be the greatest player to ever play. I mean, you look at his numbers, you can get into all kind of arguments, which I'm not going to get into. But he was first of all, he's a left-hand hitter. Miguel Cabrera was the best right-hand hitter I ever had. I think Albert Pujols probably at one time was the best player in baseball for about a 10-year period. But Miguel Cabrera is one of the greatest of all time. There's no question about it. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Barry Bonds probably should be in the Hall of Fame. Whether he will, I should say should be, but his numbers would dictate that he should be in there, but whether he will be, I have no idea. But, they're both cream of the crop. They're both, they're special players. I mean, they're better than most guys. I mean, that's just the way it is. You make it simple.
And you had special moments throughout your career, winning a World Series title in 1997 with the Florida Marlins. And then outside of Major League Baseball, winning a World Baseball Classic title in 2017 with Team USA. Now, how similar and different were those experiences for you?
Well, they're different. They're totally two separate things, to be honest with you. When you have a World Series team, you're talking about, being with guys, from the first day of spring training till the end of the season. It's a whole different ball game, really, than the World Baseball Classic. The World Baseball Classic, you're managing other teams' players, and you're with them a very short period of time. You can't really compare the two. So, I mean, they were both the ultimate. I mean, we won the World Baseball Classic and we won the World Series. So they were both the ultimate, but they're both totally different.
What was more meaningful to you then? It sounds like it was winning with the Marlins in 1997, but I don't want to put any words in your mouth either.
Well, I don't think. Like I said, I think it's separate. I don't think you can. I don't think you can say which one is more meaningful because it's two separate things. I mean, USA had never won it, so that's something special. The Marlins were at that time the youngest expansion team to ever win the World Series. It's every manager's goal. It has a team for a whole season to win a World Series. So, that has a special place, obviously, in your heart, as well as the USA Baseball. I will say this. When you put that USA shirt on, it's a totally different ball game than when you put your jersey on for the Tigers or the Marlins or the Pirates, whatever it may be. it is different when you put that USA jersey on.
Pretty cool to put on that Team USA uni. I just wish I have the chance one day. Maybe I don't know through what, but it'd be nice to do so to represent your country. And do you plan on doing so again in 2021 with that Team USA team in the WBC?
I don't know what's going to happen by then. There'll probably be different players. I'm sure there'll be a different manager. But, I think the one thing we did do is we kind of put it on the map. We were aware of it prior to this year, but I think the players enjoyed it so much. I think a lot of those players have really spread a good word about it. I think it'll be a little easier to get some of the players next go around, but it's a very tough and trying thing. I was not a proponent of the WBC for the simple reason that, you lose a Miguel Cabrera or Victor Martinez or whoever it may be, Ian Kidd or whoever it may be, in one of those, then you're upset, So I was always a little reserved about it. I took the job because it was an opportunity to manage for our country, and it all worked out great. But it's a very trying job. I mean, you're dealing with other people's players with long-term contracts, and they got to amp up a little early in spring training, earlier than they normally would. There's all kind of concerns about that. This one just turned out really perfect. It couldn't have been any better.
So if I told you that I wanted to go into baseball coaching one day, what's one word of advice that you would offer to me and to anybody that really wants to get into coaching one day?
Well, I think you got to be patient, number one. I mean, people don't realize all the guys there are in the minor leagues that have that dream someday of being in the big leagues as a coach or whatever it may be. So there's so many people involved. I mean, there's so many more instructors and coaches in the minor leagues today than when I was in the minor leagues. We didn't have that many, but now, so you're going to have patience, and the one thing you obviously you have to have is you have to have a love for the game. And that's why when guys are in the minor leagues a long time, one thing about them for sure, they love the game because, they're riding buses. They don't get paid all that well. They make a lot of sacrifices. Most of them have families, away from home, and it's not as easy as people think. So I would say that you have to have a love for the game and you have to have patience.
Now, Jim, I do want to discuss a delicate situation. People in town are kind of talking about Michael Fulmer. There's been news circulating that maybe the Tigers might be willing to part ways with him, listen to some offers. Now, we're dealing in a people business when you are dealing with, major league athletes and things like that, and there's going to be trade rumors, and I know you said it's a big boy business, but back in the day when you were, managing a club and there maybe was a player that was maybe potentially going to be traded, would you talk to him or would you get a sense that, look, you still have a job to do and it's part of the business? What is it like when a player is, on the trade block and potentially could be gone and then trying to manage in that environment?
Well, it's just a matter that you keep a line of communication always open with the player and you're honest with them, and just because somebody else, a writer from another city, mentions that, hey, this particular team is interested in a certain player you have, that doesn't mean that you're interested in trading him. That's just somebody said, we'd like to have this guy or that guy. And the other thing I've always, I thought Dave Dombrowski had the best attitude about that. He said, well, if you had Barry Bonds, would you trade him? And he said, well, I would for 2 Barry Bonds. So I think that's the way you look at it. But you always keep your line of communication open with all your players, and you're honest with them, and you're upfront with them. And I had a player come in one time. He said, hey, I heard that I'm mentioning a trade that I possibly might be traded. I just flat out told him. I said, well, if we get the guy we're trying to get, you will be traded. Because I knew ahead of time that his agent had already told him that this was going on and there was a strong possibility. So, if I would have sat there and said, oh, no, you're not, that's not true, blah, 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 that would have been a total lie. So I told him, I said, to be honest with you, if we get the player we want, there's a good chance that you're going to be traded.
Yeah, so it's good to be honest then with the players. When there are trade rumors floating around, let's be accountable for all that and be honest with them and tell them the truth then, huh? In so many words.
Well, I think what you have to understand is that a lot of that stuff is speculation by the media. And I don't have any problem with that. They're doing their job. They're looking at fits. They say, hey, this could be a possibility. This team's really, ready to win right now. The Tigers have a pitcher or a player that would really get them over the hump. So a lot of that stuff is speculation, and most of it is not true. But I understand the people saying that this could be a fit or that could be a fit. That's really the media striking up baseball conversation. Sometimes it can be harmful, but most of the time you take it with a grain of salt.
How much did coaching in the minors help you out as a big league skipper?
Well, it was without question. I mean, it was it was the only way for me. Obviously, I wasn't a big league player, and I can make it pretty simple, really. I was a no-name minor league player, and basically, I had to earn the players' respect. If you're a really good big league player and get a manager's job, you probably got to lose the players' respect. So there's a big difference, managing the minor leagues. I mean, these guys can tell you all they want about some of the guys that have no experience right now, and they're doing good jobs, and they're good managers. At the same time, I'm sure they would all tell you, had they had some experience, it certainly would be advantageous. I mean, the more you do something, hopefully the better you get at it, or you should be getting better at it. And, I think that's a big factor. So I don't think you have to manage in the minor leagues to be a good major league manager. But I do think if you have managed in the minor leagues, that experience that you have gives you a little advantage over a guy that's doing it for the first time.
And keep doing what you love. Keep doing more and more of it. And my podcast partner, John, and I, just doing more and more podcasting, right? Getting more and more reps. Hopefully we get better, and hopefully we've gotten better. I mean, we've done 140-plus episodes now of Tigers Talk and all these different podcasts, so we've just got to continue getting better.
Well, you see a lot of things happen in the minor leagues that if you've managed in the minor leagues, you see a lot of things happen. And if you haven't managed, a lot of times you're seeing those things for the first time when you're a big league manager. So, when you're a minor league manager, you've seen a lot of things that have happened as far as the game and, different situations and everything. So they don't really surprise you, when you get, at the major league level. They're not a surprise to you because you've seen those things. You live through them a little bit. And when you haven't managed, those things may, sneak up on somebody.
Jim Leyland on Vito's VIP line. And I'll leave you with this. What is one unique thing about Jim Leyland that many people do not know?
I love flowers.
Okay. And what kind?
Any kind. My yard's full of all kinds.
So you grow these flowers then too, it sounds like?
We get plants and we plant them. We have all kind of flowers in our yard. And my wife's an expert gardener. And, I love them. I water them all the time and they love it. It's like when you take a drink of water when you're thirsty, it feels good. Well, those flowers love it. So I really enjoy the flowers in our yard and looking at flowers and, the different types of flowers and all that kind of stuff. And that's one thing I like a lot.
So it's very rewarding, in terms of that for you. And it's been very rewarding totally for us having you on this week's episode of Tigers Talk. It's been a pleasure. And thank you much, Jim.
You're welcome.
And back here on Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. And that was the one-time Tiger skipper, Jim Leyland. A guy that I thought should have been managing the Tigers when Brad Ausmus was. I will tell you the truth, John.
So how'd you feel about that interview, man? That was fun.
It was good. It was free-flowing, I thought. Did we do pretty well? I know you got your 2 questions in, and they were good. So, good stuff, I think. Overall, right, we asked him a mixture of questions, so I think it was good.
It was very good.
Yeah.
And I was proud of you. I think that you kind of got what you were looking for in terms of his managerial style. I got the current stuff in.
Yeah, you did the current stuff. I did more of the old stuff and, getting his, picking his brain on some stuff.
And I feel like it was a very rewarding interview. Definitely thank him for his time.
Will.
Jim Leyland, former Detroit Tiger manager. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back, kind of reset what he said, a little bit about Michael Fulmer.
Sure.
And a little bit about kind of the game on Monday versus the Texas Rangers. Stay with us. You're listening to Tigers Talk on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And, Doc, we had the great chance of interviewing Jim Leyland, and I think he would fully support the Detroit Sports Commission, one of our fine partners at the DSP Network. And the Detroit Sports Commission has been bringing a ton of marquee events to our Metro Detroit area for years and years now, since 2001 specifically, and great events, including this PGA Tour event. Did you read about that? There is an event coming to Detroit now, coming to Michigan for the first time since 2009, I believe. So the Detroit Sports Commission, as usual, is making things happen in the Metro Detroit area. And with all that being said, you can follow the DSC, that is the Detroit Sports Commission, on Twitter and on Instagram at DET Sports. And make sure to check out their very fine website at DetroitSports.org. And John is flexing his muscles, and I just took off my shirt. Not really. But we had Jim Leyland on, and it was a pleasure talking to him. And let's get into a little bit about what he said. I know you wanted to talk about Fulmer and what he said regarding that, and about being honest. I like that a lot out of him. And then about Iglesias, what he had said. And he didn't mind Gardy talking to him and having the little beef, and he understands. And he said that guys can be outspoken. He didn't mind that either. But you know what? He dealt with guys that were outspoken. I asked him about Barry Bonds. I think that was a good question. Bonds was outspoken. He had to deal with guys like that with big egos. Not that Iglesias has a huge ego, Doc, but all these guys, when they become older and older, they become more and more mature guys, veterans, they're going to speak their minds a little bit, and you got to deal with that in the locker room.
And I think that's why they were good questions in that it's going to be asked. People are going to talk about it, but sometimes in the media, and I do agree too, sometimes it's made more of a big deal in terms of what we're talking about. And the guys in the room are like, look, I'm going to address it. And obviously he's going to have a talk with Jose Iglesias. They'll handle it and they'll move forward. And I think sometimes the media and even us, we just hype things up to a level where they just go and it's like, okay, another thing on the road. It's on the agenda. It'll be like, talk to Jose and we'll talk about the play and things like that. It's just what happens in the course of a game. You talk about it. There's maybe a misunderstanding. And what I liked about what Jim Leyland said was, look, it's a big boy business, so we're going to handle it. And so when I asked the question about Michael Fulmer, I do agree that, you know what, keeping it simple is the right way to go. If a guy asks you, hey, am I going to be traded, you be honest and say, look, potentially speaking, we are looking at all opportunities, but that's the psychology of it in that as a player, how tough it must be to know that potentially your employer doesn't want you. And I think going into it, if you're taught well that, look, it's a business, you do have loyalty to the team that you're on, but maybe only to like 92% degree, enough to keep everybody happy, be satisfied, but always know that if there's someone better coming along and there's someone that could do the job better, the team likely is going to, take an opportunity and trade you. And I really love that analogy. I think maybe I'll use that one as well, where where he said, if I can get 2 Michael Fulmers,
he would do it for him.
He would trade
like
it.
you said with Barry Bonds, right? If he could get 2 Barry Bonds for 1 Barry Bonds, I'll do it. And I would do it any day of the week, too, so I support that fully. And I'm a guy that's accountable. I'm upright, a stand-up dude. I think I admit when I'm wrong, and when there's something going on, if you think there's a rumor going on, you admit that, hey, it's being floated around and it could happen. Like I've talked to the GM, I've talked to Avila or Dave Dombrowski when it was Leland as manager back in the day. They talked about it, and so it's out there in the open. It's not just speculative stuff created by the media, because the media will create rumors. And once again, a lot of it can be false stuff. I mean, right? We know that. Salacious and falsehoods created by the media. But when it is true, I think the manager in the front office of the Major League Baseball club has the duty and the responsibility, Doc, to tell the player what truly is going on.
So what do you make of the current Fulmer rumors, where it's come out? And again, it's not really news.
No, I don't think it is. I'll tell you my opinion. You give your take here, bud.
Yeah, just to set the scene. It's not really news. I mean, look, if you listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast Network, I introduced the topic a year ago. I said, look, if you're going to blow this thing up, as you should, consider trading Michael Fulmer. He'll bring you a haul. And it may be, now being exasperated or sped up because maybe Michael Fulmer's saying some things like, look, going out there, giving up a couple hits and a couple runs every game is not enough. I want to compete. And maybe he's starting to say some things as well. But in the end, it's a big boy business, as Jim Leyland said. And if there are offers that are there, Avila has to pick up the phone. And no doubt about it, they should trade him. I mean, I think I'm a guy that said it early. Look, you're not going to be good for 5 years.
Well, I don't know about that, but let's not.
You're not going to be good for 5 years.
We open up that can of worms. That could go on forever here on Tigers Talk.
You're not going to be competitive to win the World Series for 5 years. And I know the contract for Fulmer is a guy you want, but if you can get 3 Michael Fulmers.
Well, you do it. And I would say that too. If you get overwhelmed, you would deal him, Doc, any day of the week. Okay? Any day of the week that ends in Y.
Here's another wrinkle, too, that people can throw into the mix when they message us on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast or you at Vito Jerome. Fans are smart. They don't have confidence that Avila can get 2 Michael Fulmers. Yeah. So that's the caveat that scares people, is that the level of capability of these general managers in Detroit, I think their stock is worse than us as podcasters, to be honest with you. I think that we have more credibility doing what we do.
Really? We have more trust?
Yes.
I hope we do, but I don't believe that either.
I do. I believe it.
You can believe it. I don't.
I think that if you polled everybody in Metro Detroit, do you trust Avila? And the answer would be no.
Well, I agree with that. But I don't know about podcasters having more credibility than Avila.
Well,
it's about the same. Let's say I'll give it this. I'm not going to push. How about Big Vito's over under? Big Vito's over under 50%. So the trust factor for Avila, Big Vito's over under less than 50%.
Less
I would
than
say
50%.
even podcasters. Let's admit it here. Come on.
Oh, no.
Over under 50. I'm putting it at 50. Over under 50%.
Now, see, Vito, you changed the question. Podcasting in general, there are a lot of bad ones out there that don't know what they're doing.
So,
in general. Now,
that's what I would say. I was saying that in general. In general, it's below 50%.
But the Detroit Sports Podcast Network, I would give it at a 60% approval rating.
Okay, there we go. Fair enough. I would say 60 to 65%. That's fair.
From what we've done, gaining sponsors, having daily content consistently. Vito, we got almost 4 shows that are almost at 200 episodes. Come on now.
That's awesome.
Give us some credit.
And we're doing awesome. Hey, I'm a part of the broadcast network. I think I will give myself some credit, and you at times. I do.
Being that you want to challenge the field a little bit, I'll continue to do more to push the field. I've done that as well, and And podcasts like Drew and Mike have done great things to bring more attention to the field and things
Bill
like
Simmons,
that.
your boy Adam Carolla, guys have done it and have done really well at it. But you know what the podcasting, the theory, the mentality about podcasters is? And I've said it before on this podcast or on Two Bad Hombres. It said, they do it out of their grandmother's basement or mother's basement. That's a bad persona that podcasters have.
Now to reel it in and
let's reel it in, back in, yes.
To talk about Michael Fulmer, if there's an opportunity to do it and you can get talent that you can hype up to the fans of Detroit and make it believable, I'm all for it.
Good for you. And guess what? Do you think I am, by the way? What do you think? Do you think I am?
I think you're going to say, you know what, he's under team control. He's got a great contract. Let him pitch some more. Let's up his value even a year or two that he has an opportunity to bring in a massive haul with the level of success that he has. But it comes with risk. Anytime he goes out there, anytime he goes to the mound, could be his last appearance.
Could be another injury to him as well. He's dealt with elbow problems with his right arm. So when you bring that into the equation, you might want to deal him while his stock is extremely high, but then you have to bank on him becoming better and better, and I think he's already proven that he can become better and better, and he's still in his prime. He's youthful. He's great. He brings that fastball. He can throw it past batters, can get the K, can get guys out in other ways, other fashions. So this guy is supremely talented, and he is an ace-caliber arm. He is the definitive ace of the Tigers pitching staff at this point, and he's a guy that could be the ace of a lot of other Major League Baseball clubs at this point. So not just the Tigers because they're a lackluster ball club, only going to win, 69 games. 69, I said it. And not just because of that, because Fulmer could start in other places and be the ace or be the number 2 arm of that rotation because he is that good of a right-handed arm. He's a guy that could compete for Cy Youngs in the future. And that's why, I've already kind of said it, I already did say it clearly, that you have to be overwhelmed, completely overwhelmed to deal Michael Fulmer at this point. You have to get 2 or 3 Michael Fulmers. Let's say 2 Michael Fulmers to deal Michael Fulmer himself. You have to get a package similar to what they got for Alex Avila and Justin Wilson. So where you get overwhelmed, I wish that was kind of overwhelming. And you want even better, bigger and better package of prospects for Michael Fulmer in order to deal them. And really quick, just to reel this all back into what the original kind of topic was or why this was brought to the table, Doc, this week on Tigers Talk, it's because of John Morosi. He tweeted out that the Tigers were entertaining, phone calls, taking phone calls for Michael Fulmer. Well, guess what I say in response to that? It's going to happen. I think the Angels take calls from Mike Trout because people are going to call. People called on Derek Jeter when he was a member of the Bronx Bombers. Was Mr. Jeter the guy that they wanted to build around for years and years? Was their shortstop of the present and future and one of their best players of all time? Well, guess what? They took calls on Derek Jeter. So if you call the team's GM, the team's president, and you say, hey, what do you think about Michael Fulmer? Would you deal him for this package? Package A, package B. You have the right to, and guess what? That's going to happen. So the Tigers taking calls, it's no big news, no big shake to me because I think it happens on a daily basis, Doc, in Major League Baseball, in professional sports. I think it happens on the daily in all these professional sports leagues. So nothing new to me. It's not news to me, Doc.
Understood. And your thoughts on Jose Iglesias? You believe Jim Leland was fair? I think that was a good comment on his part. All right. To end the podcast, we're going to have an edition of Vito's Notebook, the latest edition. But just before we get to that, what do you think about the week ahead for the Tigers?
Well, you got the Rangers here, and you would hope they win Tuesday night and that they win Wednesday, right? And they're on the road, but it's the Texas Rangers. They're not that great of a ball club themselves. So you got 3 in Texas, and I like their odds of taking at least 1, and you better at least take 1 against the Tejas Rangers. But now you have 20 losses. You're 14-20. Have you settled into 3rd place? Will the Tigers get above what they are right now and get into 2nd place again, Doc? That's a big question mark, and I don't think a lot of Tigers fans are really invested in that question, so we're not going to discuss it fully here. But I think this is where they end up potentially, 3rd or 4th place this season. And now, moving on to my notebook a little bit, and 5 numbers you need to know about the Tigers because I wrote an article about this for the Free Press. So a shameless plug for me, and this article came out Monday morning, and it's still relevant to a large degree because one of my notes was about Miguel Cabrera, who's still currently on the 10-day disabled list with a right hamstring strain. And he has 21 runs batted in on the season, Doc. He reached 21 runs batted in against the Baltimore Orioles April 28th after driving in 5 runs. Guess when he recorded his 21st RBI last season?
When?
May 29th.
Wow.
When he picked up 3 of them, including his 22nd run batted in against the Kansas City Royals. So it took him an extra month, a month plus, to get his 21st RBI last season. That tells you where Miguel Cabrera is at this season at the plate and where he was at last season at the plate. He has progressed, and he looks like the Miggy of old, and that's great to see as Tigers fans and pundits at large. And moving on to note number 2 about Francisco Liriano. Now, the lefty hasn't allowed more than 3 earned runs in any of his 6 starts this season. Now, this is going into Tuesday, the day of our recording. And the last time he had such a stretch as a starting arm doc was in what year? Kind of a Vito's trivia and Vito's notebook all packed into one.
Go ahead.
2015 was the last time he had such a stretch as a starting pitcher. When he was a member of who? A team that Jim Leyland managed. I'm asking you a lot of questions here and putting you really on the spot, but a team that Jim Leyland once managed.
The Pirates.
The Pirates. There we go. Helped you out. The Pirates it is. Okay, so how about a Jose Iglesias? We already kind of talked about him, so I'm going to actually glance over this and kind of move right past it, but because I already noted it too earlier. It was kind of a part of Vito's notebook, but he's on pace for his lowest offensive marks of his career, Doc.
Yeah,
not good.
No.
A major pass, right, on Jose Iglesias right now. And then there's lefty Daniel Norris. I started getting into this note earlier as well on this week's episode of Tigers Talk. He once had a streak, Doc, of allowing 3 earned runs or less in 21 consecutive starts, and he tossed at least 5 innings in all but one of those starts. It lasted from October 4th of 2015 until April 14th of 2017. Since that streak ended for Norris against the Tampa Bay Rays on April 20th of last season, in which Norris allowed 4 earned runs, so since then, he has made 17 additional starts, Doc. In those 17 starts, only 8 times has he thrown at least 5 innings and allowed 3 earned runs or less. The last time he did so was last season on September 28th, his last outing of 2017, and that came against the Royals, in which he threw 5 innings and blanked the Royals. So from his outing of April 20th of last year until his most recent outing before his DL stint, April 29th versus the Orioles, he has recorded nearly a 6 ERA, Doc, a 5.79 earned run average, and 104.2 innings pitched. That tells you right there. And then one other note, last note, to cap off Vito's notebook for this week. Michael Fulmer, who's been great this season. He could be a Cy Young candidate. Well, guess what? Now, this was prior to his start Monday night, but going into his start Monday night against the Rangers, his ERA outside of his start against the Indians earlier in this season was 1.40. So he's done great outside of the Indians and really Monday night against the Texas Rangers. Also, his FIP from last season, or 2 years ago, and that was when he won the American League Rookie of the Year award and matched up before Monday night start with his FIP, his fielding independent pitching mark, that is, for this season. So had a lot going right for him until last night's start, and really it was smooth sailing until the middle innings of his start Monday night.
Gotcha, Vito.
So there was a
Great
lot
notebook.
there, a lot to unpack. I think I unpacked a lot there in that Vito's Notebook segment.
Finally, what did you make of Jim Leyland saying that the Central is not playing well? Do you think that's just going to pick up? It's just one of those things where you look at it and you say, well, right now it's early, it's still May, that the division is going to have a chance to shake out once moves are made, once Cleveland distinguishes themselves from the group.
Yeah, the Indians are the clear-cut favorite. You know, the clear-cut princes and king. They're the clear-cut kings of the division. There's nobody close to them. You know, the Twins are in second place now. It took a while for them to get to second place. They're still under 500. But they're clearly the second-best team, and they still might lose the division by 8 to 10 games, I would say.
Okay. You know what? I always say last thing, but something always pops in my head, which is good, but we got to actually
You're always
be a little more
thinking, I
organized.
like that.
What was it like, your experience at the U.S. PBL Media Day? I got a chance. They invited me, and I said, you know what? Vito loves baseball. I think he should hobnob with the media. He's the more accredited guy. He's the guy that's more journalistic. Although he's the guy that gets in trouble on Twitter for not being for not following
because of
Twitter
one
rules.
person, not me. But anyways,
For not following Twitter rules, but you are the journalist with credibility he's willing to apologize and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
What was it like going out to Utica and checking out what's going on there? Andy Appleby, CEO of the USPBL, doing great things. They're entering their 3rd season, and you got to be part of Media Day. Did you feel part of the team, part of media?
it was fun, and I got to, shake hands and, rub elbows with some credible media members, like us, we're credible.
Yeah.
But like Lauren Jabara, I met her for the first time. Lovely lady, got to talk to her. Never had talked to her in person, knew of her, knew who she was. So we formally met. Man, she was telling me stuff. She's going to Vegas, telling me about her friend. Very cool lady. But, Andy Appleby and all of them, and,
Scott McDonald, and then Nico Lolio. I got to interview him, first baseman, designated hitter of the Utica Unicorns, 4 teams in the USPBL, 3rd season. The Birmingham Bloomfield Beavers won it last season, so you got 4 teams this season. And there were many questions and topics about expansion. They want to expand. They're openly engaging in discussions to expand. And it sounds like a new stadium will be built as well, and that's when they will add to the teams. And right now they have 4 once again. An opening weekend is this weekend at Jimmy John's Field in Utica, a lovely venue to watch baseball. And Monday at the Media Day, it was a lovely weather. I mean, I got to be out there on the field. I stood out there on the grass, lovely, infield, baseball diamond venue. The scoreboard looks great. They have so much to offer to the fans, and it has a family-oriented environment. Exactly, and that's all I could do is offer you an opportunity, and you've took advantage of it. I'm glad you went, really, to develop relationships.
Yeah.
I know Sky Kirstein was there, Neil Rule was there, Jennifer Hammond from Fox 2.
The Hammer.
So it's Fox 2, the staff there, the Detroit News, Free Press, and Vito and the Detroit Sports Podcast.
And nobody
baby.
from the Free Press, actually.
Oh,
well,
okay.
technically me, but I wasn't doing it for the Free Press, but somebody from the news. Nobody from the Free Press. How about that? But Channel 2 had Sky, had Jennifer Hammond. So you had people like that. Neil Rule was there, and they're going to call 10 games on ESPN3. Neil Rule, Matt Derry, and Lauren Jabara. So pretty darn cool stuff, right, for the USPBL. And they're
It's
growing.
local.
You know, they're growing.
It's like right by my house, like 5
Right?
minutes
You
from
should
the
go to
house.
a game or two. We should go together.
Yes.
We can hang out, actually,
So,
unlike we typically
I'm
do.
glad you had an opportunity to use the microphone, tell everybody. And did you say, hey, I'm Vito with Detroit Sports
Vito
Podcast?
Chirco, I think I did. Hope I did. But anyways, they knew who I was doing it for. I did tell them for my podcast. And like Scott McDonald, you know what? I did tell him what I was doing it for the podcast network. And he just kept giving me players. He was feeding me players. And I had to find out who these guys are. So he was telling me, luckily. But, I mean, these guys are up-and-coming guys, and 20 players from the league have signed Major League Baseball contracts, contracts with Major League Baseball organizations.
They want to become a reliable, viable feeder system into the minors and also build their own credibility as well as they build more fans and allow people to watch baseball locally.
It's a great developmental league, and now it's kind of uncanny how unique it is. And so you had Andy Appleby, Scott McDonald talk about how unique it is compared to other independent leagues like the Frontier Independent League, and these are feeder leagues, like you said, to minor league baseball.
No doubt about it. Great podcast, Vito. All thanks to Jim Leland for coming on. If you're a fan of the network, definitely support us for free. Visit our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. You can follow Vito on Twitter at Vito Jerome. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. Message anytime your thoughts on the interview, what you liked, what you didn't like, and what your reactions are to our thoughts on Michael Fulmer being traded.
Adios. Thank you much, guys.